Vass is an artist, filmmaker, photographer, and author by day, and a Metro bus driver by night. His community building work has been showcased on TED, NPR, the Seattle Times, King 5, and landed him a spot on Seattle Magazine's 2018 list of 35 most influential people in Seattle and Seattle Mets 2021 Power Players list. His book, The Lines That Make Us, is a national Seattle bestseller and finalist for the 2019 Washington State Book Awards. Please welcome Nathan.
I don't think I'll need that water bottle, just in case.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to be amongst these authors. I hope you know all the authors. I knew most of them, but not all of them. I was reading up on them. It's such a fabulous group. Thank you for being here tonight. And also a big thanks to Bruce for supporting my book through thick and thin. Lots of gratitude here. So, as Justine alluded to, my day job is in the arts, filmmaking, and photography. The night job is where it gets a little more interesting, driving Metro buses, primarily in Central and South Seattle for the last 16 years. What this job has illuminated for me is that I feel that we choose our beliefs. We see often only what we're looking for, right? Not the other way around. Whatever belief I have or opinion I have about humanity, I'm going to see evidence of when I walk out the door. And that's empowering, but it's also a little scary. You got to be careful because you can get to thinking some pretty awful things about folks. And but some bus driver colleagues and myself call that the fall. You don't want to get caught in the fall because you usually don't realize until you're pretty far gone into being pessimistic about folks. I try to look for the positive. And what this book is in the blog, the book and the blog associated with it, is primarily unexpectedly positive encounters that have happened to me on the street, or otherwise heavy or challenging moments that are depicted in something other than a miserablest lens. I do not think it is easy to have a positive outlook. I think it is difficult. We all know this, especially nowadays. It takes discipline and focus, but it's worth it, right? Makes you feel better. It's easier to help people. I urge you to check out this book, not just because Bruce and I are trying to sell some copies. That's a small part of it. But because the premier ongoing citywide conversation that we're all having in Seattle now is no longer about the weather or about sports, but about the state of the streets. Who's out there? Why are they there? Do we feel safe or not? Etc., etc. This book is my contribution to that dialogue. The idea that if you're looking for goodness, you're going to find it. So without further ado, I'm going to read two stories for you. I want to make the most of these 10 minutes. The first one begins with a dialogue exchange. It's not important to keep track of who's speaking. And also there's just a little bit of language, but we're all adults, right? I think it's better to tell a truthful story than a diluted one. So, without further ado, this is called Cowboys of the New Age. Pardon me. Well, during the time he was alive, Titus was his most popular play. Really? Yeah, Titus, which is interesting because it's so violent. Just outrageous what they do to one another in that one. And I wonder if that's what drew the crowd back then, you know? But it's a little too much for me, man. In answer to your question, I'd probably say Macbeth, because it has this sort of X trajectory between the two protagonists. You know what I'm saying? And the other guy says, okay. And the first guy continues, yeah, because Macbeth starts off being all hesitant to abuse his power and acquire more of it, and Lady Macbeth eggs him on, as you know. But as shit progresses, they begin to switch places, where Macbeth gets more and more power-hungry, and Lady Macbeth realizes this shit has gone too far, especially when she gives that sweet monologue toward the end explaining it. So they gradually kind of switch places on the whole corrupting influence of power, which is kind of tight. Coriolanus is better. Really? Yeah. And now they're going back and forth. I saw the movie version with Ralph Fiennes, but I haven't read it. Oh, you gotta read it, bro. But Hamlet is Shakespeare's best. Oh, totally. It's so huge. And Hamlet is only 35. He's a hipster. He's hanging out with actors and comedians. That's why his dad wants him to kill Claudius. And Romeo, he's 19, and Juliet is like 12. Oh, God. Who was having this intellectually stimulating, cultured, erudite conversation? Where were they sitting? What did they look like? And how did they dress? These were a couple of neighborhood men riding the bus round about midnight, deep in the bowels of Rainier Valley, not exactly Seattle's safest neighborhood. One was homeless, missing an eye, lugging a backpack and duffel along, the gleaming muscles on his arms sculpted not for show, but from grinding necessity. And the other, tall, wearing oversized gray sweatpants and broad-brimmed skater shoes, the kind you leave untied. His energetic afro practically sprayed out from underneath his Rainier beer hat. You may lie in bed at night, waiting for sleep to beckon. Your mind may drift, wander to the vast nether depths of the city, the blocks of buckled pavement and uncut weeds, the rife low angles of neglect and violence, our very own downtrodden Wild West. What are they thinking about, those dark figures in the gloom and rain? What are they saying to each other right this minute? Know that sometimes the cowboys of the new age talk just as they're talking above, exchanging educated thoughts on life and art, as you and I do, expounding on the great literary works which line my bookshelf, and probably yours too. Thematics and structural organization in Shakespeare plays, that's the honest truth. Thank you. And let me read one more story for you. I have 10 minutes up here, is that right?
Yeah.
How many minutes have I used?
5.
Okay. I'm reading the room. I'm making a spontaneous decision. Okay, here we are. They got on in true ragtag fashion, a duo right out of Dickens, dressed in black and cluttered flair, clutching mysterious bags in one hand while reaching to balance the rest of their gear with the other. The outfit of the street person cannot be faked, or at least not very well, because its principal ingredient is time. Time is what makes the details build on each other, stories the journey, etches into space the gradual, layered nature of existence. These two souls were no fakes. I noted her pale and weathered skin, a blotchy beige on her arms, not unattractive actually, but rather a record of a lot of life lived. Her amiable rasp of a voice which told you, here is a woman who's been to all 50 states. She had to be around the half-century mark, and he, several years her senior. His complexion, ruddy and textured, spoke similarly, a big-boned lifetime of adventures high and low. You can sense when couples have been together a long time. A similarity in dress, perhaps, or a consistency in body language. The complementary understanding of years spent filling spaces jointly. A casual two-step deeper than dance. Few things are more gratifying than seeing the passage of significant time together writ affably upon spouses or partners. It is impossible to manufacture and quite rare. That's precisely the energy these two were putting out. They were both attired in black jeans, black shirts, black shoes, clean but tattered, tattoos peeking out from her faded blouse, bracelets and rings, a modest wedding ring on the appropriate finger. He, with his silver-streaked ponytail, skin that seemed at various times equal parts tanned and burned, a string necklace holding something special. They glowed. They were clearly exhausted, but exhausted together. Whatever their challenges, they faced them not between each other, but as a unit, looking outward. She sorted something out among her belongings, encouraging him to rest, shortly before doing the same, leaning her head against his. I wasn't driving this time, but riding, just another passenger seated behind them. Her presence struck me so. I realized I'd seen her before. That fun shock of dyed blonde hair and the kindness. Yes, now I remember. A fleeting moment on a summer night in 2014 wherein she exchanged wisdom about love and loss with words I continue to go back to. That is a reference to an earlier story in this book where I met her some years prior. Today, now, I didn't need to interrupt them. They catnapped as one, drifting in and out of wakefulness, swaying to the gentle rhythms of the long freeway drive. Finally, he spoke to her softly. "You're the best woman in all the wide world," he said, his bass-heavy gravel voice tender. "And the best thing that's ever happened to me." She smiled, eyes still closed, nudging her head closer. "Thank you. Do I still have a couple minutes? I'm having fun up here. Thank you so much.